Once again, we're discussing the soon-to-be-released COVID-19 vaccine and how that will be rolled out in Canada and whether it is actually safe and effective. Dr. Malthouse, perhaps we could speak to some of the technical aspects of the COVID-19 vaccine or perhaps even generally. So first of all, what is your concern with the COVID-19 vaccine? We've heard concerns about, in general, childhood vaccines, but this one, apparently there's going to be less rigorous testing. What else concerns you about this vaccine?
Well, first you'd have to say, do we really need a vaccine when we have such a low mortality rate from COVID-19, and particularly in young people? So it really, we really don't even need a vaccine to start with. But if we look at the vaccine itself, it's completely experimental. It's a messenger RNA vaccine. There are many different companies that are trying to put them out. But the leaders have a vaccine which will attach RNA from the vaccine onto your own DNA, and will go down from generation to generation. Once you have that vaccine, there's really no turning back.
Sorry, what do you mean that it attaches to your DNA and goes generation to generation? Explain that.
Sure. Well, RNA can insert into your own chromosomal DNA, and this will then allow it essentially to be stuck. And as you pass it down through sperm into the next generation, it will be passed on to your progeny. So if we have a problem with this vaccine, it's very hard to turn back the clock. It will continue on to generation after generation. Now, we don't really know that for sure because we have had such short safety studies on it. We also see that there's this vaccine is designed to create antibodies, or to get your body to create antibodies on a steady basis against the spike protein in the coronavirus. Now, that spike protein contains an element or a protein itself, which is very similar to the one which we find in placentas. And so it may be that if you create an allergic reaction to a coronavirus, then you're also going to be creating an allergic reaction to the placenta, which will mean this will lead to infertility. And again, because the safety studies have been so brief, we don't really know the long-term effects of this. So this is completely experimental. We skipped a lot of animal studies in bringing out these vaccines. And so we don't really even have the models to compare to. Essentially, people are going to be made into guinea pigs for this vaccine.
Now, I read somewhere, and my apologies for not having it right in front of me, but I read a news report. We all get bombarded with so much information. And now, like I said, we seem to be really zeroed in on the vaccine. But I read that the vaccine will help with symptoms, but it will actually not help reduce transmission. Do you have a comment on that, Dr. Malthouse?
Yeah, they've sort of backed it up. In other words, if you can reduce a few symptoms, they're going to consider that a positive vaccine. And normally we look for a vaccine to prevent transmission and also prevent you from getting it. And these vaccines for COVID-19 are not going to do that. So they really don't even meet the standards of what we expect from a vaccine. Now, if you only reduce the symptoms a little bit, but you give a lot of side effects from the vaccine itself, and you kind of have to try to balance them. And if you do, you'll see that the severe side effects from these vaccines, which have included transverse myelitis in some participants, but also general symptoms of body aches, fatigue, rigors, fevers, and so forth. If you add in the side effects from the shot, they far outweigh the benefits you're going to have in terms of symptom reduction from the natural illness. There's also another component, which is that we've had with this type of vaccine what we call paradoxical immune enhancement, which means that in previous attempts to get coronavirus vaccines, people have actually had their system stimulated to such an extent that when they become exposed to the natural virus, they overreact and they have cytokine storms. And that's what has shown in the past to either kill subjects, animal subjects, or in the case of RSV vaccine, it actually killed 2 out of the 35 children that it was tested in.
Okay, Ted, I think most Canadians, we want, good health. We're willing to perhaps, with the risks shown, maybe we will take that chance and they might be willing to take a vaccine if they think it will prevent them from ever getting COVID. But it sounds like what Dr. Malthouse is saying is that's not the case. Then if the vaccine's not going to help us get or transmit COVID and prevent the transmission, why are we having a vaccine at all? We have 45 seconds before commercial.
Tanya, that's exactly the question. And as Dr. Malthouse has said, the threshold for efficacy for this particular vaccine is very low. All you got to do is indicate that you have lower symptoms, and they're gonna pass this one. And what we know was 80 to 85% of people who get infected with COVID have virtually no symptoms. So we already have a condition that has next to no symptoms. There is no need for this vaccine at this time.
Again, I think, most Canadians are okay with vaccines, and maybe they're not as informed as they could be. This show is perhaps helping to make some information available. But let's discuss some of the issues surrounding mandatory vaccines right when we return from this commercial break.